Good evening. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to closing night of DocLands. And we will have repeats tomorrow, so there's 2 opportunities if you miss things to catch some other films. But tonight, Rumble, the Indians Who Rocked the World, this is an amazing documentary, and I'm really so happy that we could have it as our closing night film. Have you guys had fun during the last 4 days? Great. Great, thank you. We have this commitment. We've always had a commitment to documentaries. What we showed during the year at the Smith-Raffel Film Center and at the Mill Valley Film Festival. But documentaries are so creative and so important these days that it's really replaced the news. And we're just going to dig in even deeper. So thank you for coming. We have a very special guest tonight. Stevie Salas is the executive producer, but that's just the tip of the iceberg, and I don't want to embarrass him and say he's a Renaissance man, but he is. But you wouldn't know all this from watching the movie, so I'm going to say it. You know, guitarist, author, TV host, musical director, record producer, film composer, and advisor of contemporary music at the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. Now, I'm not done. He's played with George Clinton, Mick Jagger, and the Rolling Stones, Aerosmith, Justin Timberlake, Adam Lambert. He worked on American Idol during its heyday years. He's recorded over 70 albums, and he was voted one of the top 50 guitarists of all time. Okay, and he's also a writer, and his memoirs from his first tour with Rod Stewart is a book that you should buy, and you can still get it on Amazon. So without further ado, please welcome the executive producer of Rumble, Stevie Salas.
Thank you, Mark. Is Mark not awesome or what? Do you see, if you walk through the theater, you see Mark and you see the history of what you've done here with all these legends, Cindy Pollock and also. So I'm just not worthy, okay? I love this guy. I'm just gonna make it quick so you can see the film. We've been really doing well. We've been winning festivals all over. We won at Sundance, and we won the next week at Boulder, the next whatever it was. And we just won last week 2 big awards at Hot Docs in Toronto, and we've been in Cannes, and we were in Budapest, and we're going to Sydney next month. And so the film really has wheels, and I'm super thankful. I just want you to know, this is something I started working on probably 10 years ago. First, I was a guitar player playing with Rod Stewart when I was a kid out of high school, and I realized that I didn't see anybody around who looked like me. So I just started to do research, right? Like, wow, because I don't know, when I grew up surfing on the beach in San Diego, and I just thought I looked like everybody else. But after a while, I realized I didn't fit the stereotypes, and I started to look around, and I started to find out about some of these people, and I wondered why nobody knew that they were Native Americans. And not for any political reason, just out of curiosity, you know? And years later, I met a guy called Tim Johnson what happened was I went to Toronto and I opened up for the Rolling Stones at a huge gig there, and I met a guy named Brian Wright McLeod who wrote this encyclopedia of recorded music. He documented all recorded music going back to the early 1900s by Native American people, and he wanted to interview me. He turned me on to a lot of this information in a much deeper way, and shortly after that, I met a guy called Tim Johnson who was the co-director of the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. I told him about this information, and he said, wow. So next thing I know, I was working at the Smithsonian. I barely have a high school education, mind you. So him and I set out to create the exhibit, which was called Up Where We Belong, Natives and Popular Culture. Nobody at the Smithsonian wanted to do it. Everyone thought, you know, they did exhibits on pottery and spears and, you know, I'm not kidding. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, that's what, you have nice blankets. And nobody wanted Randy Castillo from Ozzy Osbourne in the Smithsonian, right? So it was a hard push, but Tim Johnson really muscled it through since he was the boss, and it turned out to be the most popular museum exhibit that they ever have had. And it ran in New York and Washington, D.C. Yeah. So shortly after that, I went out and I found a group of people called Resolution Pictures who had just made a cool documentary called Real Engine that dealt with the stereotypes of Native people in Hollywood. And we decided to make this film. And 5 years later, here we are. And it was 4 years of hell, but it's worth it. And if anybody disputes any of the information, don't yell at me because it was vetted by the Smithsonian. Okay, that's all I'm going to tell you. But it's all good. It's all true. It's been vetted. And I hope you enjoy it. And I guess we're going to do a Q&A after.
Yeah, we'll be back after the film.
Thank you so much. I hope you like it.
Enjoy. Stevie Salas.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. That's not necessary. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this is a great film, And I wonder, did you conceive this as the way it wound up, or was there a road to discovery? And, obviously I know this has been something you've been really passionate about for a long time, but how did that come together?
The subject was something I've been deep into for a while and learning more and more about. But of course, anybody who's a filmmaker knows it. I am not Robert Rodriguez. Like, I can't shoot it, script, edit it, the whole bit. And it takes a team. And this film really took a serious team because I wanted to originally, I just got tired of going places and hearing only bad stories, right? Or, we got screwed here, we got screwed there, they took our this, they took our music. And I said, let's not do that. I want to show some heroes, right? I wanted young people to know that there were some people they could look up to. It wasn't all bad. And then the tough part was the director, Catherine Bainbridge, and Fonz, the two directors, constantly there's this giant elephant in the room called racism, right? That it's really easy to grab onto, and it's always there. And I had to fight. Let's not use that card. Let's not use that card. I don't want to lean on that. I don't want to use that as our crutch because it's always used. I go, let's just talk about how these guys were amazing. And Catherine and Fonz found an incredible way, my two directors, to walk on that razor's edge where you see there's racism. I mean, come on, Jesse Ed Davis, what other musician in the world could play with all four Beatles, play with the Stones, play with Eric Clapton, play with Rod Stewart, and nobody knows who he is? I mean, so it's there, but we just didn't want to lean on it, so that was the hard part, and I got to give it to Catherine Bainbridge and Fonz, the directors, for being real sensitive about that and not going for the easy kill on that stuff. So.
Well, it really works. Having John in the film was kind of a centering aspect of it. Did you know him before?
Yeah. Trudell, I've never been really starstruck in my life. When I was very young, I worked with some incredible people. And the only time I was ever starstruck actually was with George Harrison once when he sat with me and bought me drinks, and he made me feel all tripped out. And believe it or not, Bill Graham, who was my manager when I was a kid in San Francisco, Bill Graham, I used to really be starstruck around Bill for some reason. He had just a thing about him. It just was like I was in awe of him. And I felt that way about John Trudell. So I would show up, even after I was somewhat established, if I showed up somewhere and there was a lot of other skins or Native Americans there hanging out, trying to get to John, and he would see me and he'd go, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he would walk me backstage. I would somehow feel like a prancing, because John Trudell had this power, and I'm going to tell you right now, John was no angel, okay? And he doesn't know him, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, I asked him one time, "How many kids do you have?" He goes, "I don't know, 11, 12, 13. And I'm like, what? So, but you learn to find what's amazing about people, and you balance it out because nobody's really perfect, right? And being around John Trudell, for me, was always like, I just felt really lucky to be around John. And having, I knew this was John's last interview before he passed away. And he never told us he was sick again, but I knew he was. I knew he was. And I didn't bring it up. And but I must admit, if any of you guys ever got to know him, he was an amazing, amazing person. The things that would come out of his mouth are just like mind-blowing.
So, you come out of high school, you're having some big hits, you're playing with these incredible world-famous musicians, you're coming from Southern California. When was it for you really that you kind of knew, hey, wait a minute, this is my heritage, this is an influence in music, and the story hasn't been told, and looking at, people, great musicians who weren't getting recognized. When was that? When did that happen?
It's a little bit, it's like, I always knew who I was. I mean, my parents always told me who I was, but was never like, I'm better than you. I grew up my father left the country in between Cheyenne and Laramie, where he lived in the middle of nowhere in a place called Ozone. He left at 17 and went and fought in the Korean War, and when he came back, he lived in Camp Pendleton. So when I was born in Oceanside, California, surfing on the beach, and I had black friends and green friends and purple friends, and so to me, we were all just people, right? And I played rock and roll and I surfed, but I knew who I was. But it was like, Robbie Robertson said something that isn't in the film, but Robbie said, you just didn't walk into a room and say, hey, I'm John Polanski, I'm Polish. You just didn't do that. He goes, so you never walked in. I'm Stevie Salas, my picture. Robbie Robertson, I'm a Mohawk. You just didn't. You were who you were. And so that's how my life was. But if anybody would ask, you would talk about it, right? But that was never the topic of a story. It was not about separatism, really. So I always knew who I was. And like I said earlier before the film, I used to hear this name Jesse Ed Davis all the time because I played with Rod Stewart, which was my first band. And I actually was playing songs that Jesse Ed had written with Rod. And I didn't know he was Native American. I just knew the name. And then one day I was in a recording studio with the Rolling Stones. They were recording whatever the album was. I forget which one it was. And I asked Ronnie Wood about this guitar he used to play that was a Zematis guitar that was made out of looked like seashells or something. I used to see it all the time when I was a little kid. So whatever happened to that guitar? And he goes, you know who gave me that guitar? Jesse Ed Davis. And he said it like he was talking about a god or something like. And it just, again, I was like, there's that name again. Every time someone talks about that guy, they talk about him like he is like a superhero. Mm-hmm. So it got me more and more interested in finding out more about these people. And I figured if I thought they were pretty amazing, that other people would. And this last bit, when we went to do the Smithsonian exhibit, the original thing we originally were trying to do with Tim Johnson, we were just trying to have an exhibit of merit. We don't have a lot of positive role models in Indian country, and we thought, well, here's a bunch. Let's show them. But what happened was, as we started digging into their stories, we started to realize that there was a ton of history that no one knew about, which you saw in the film, which we didn't know about. I mean, we were just like, wow, the more we dug, the more we found out. And by accident, sort of, we really unearthed unknown American history. So what the film's really about is about the development of North America. And music is one of the products of that, of the slaves and the African Americans and Native Americans and the Scottish and the Irish and wherever they were living and what was going on. That's really what this film ended up being about, and the exhibit as well. It was this collection of all these cultures that created who we all are. It wasn't just these guys did this and these guys did this, and that's really was the real pearl of the film, I think.
So the exhibit that you did, is that something we can still see?
No, it ran in D.C., then it ran for a year in New York City, and now it's done. I don't know, maybe if the film becomes huge, they'll bring it back and do the Smithsonian tour or something, which would be cool. But,
that would be great.
Yeah, I actually found that guitar. Link Ray was playing in the early, that double weird guitar. I found that, and we had it in the Smithsonian, which was cool.
Shall we open it up for questions?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess you're the most enthusiastic one here. We'll come back to you later. No, okay, go.
I do native radio here in Northern California, and I'm Mississippi band Choctaw. And growing up, my great uncle, who was chief at one point of our tribe, used to pick on me and call me Buffy Jr. because I was born a rocker, classic rock. Give me music, I want to rock. And he used to tell me that we invented rock and roll, the Choctaw. We invented that, and I thought he was picking on me. And to see this movie and to see the Southern Choctaw survival roots, that are now the foundation of this. I am so proud right now that not only did we invent the word okay, which means and so it is, we also invented rock. So,
There you go. Well,
so thank you.
Well. good. There you go. Now you know your dad wasn't lying. Yeah, your dad wasn't lying.
The gentleman way in the back.
When you were during the film, there was a point where you said you were partying too much, and I think it was Crispito said, "Let me take you to Indian land."
Indian country.
You went there. What was that? What happened with you? What was that like? What did you go through?
Go ahead.
Did people hear that question? Okay.
It said, what was it like going to Indian country and what happened to me? This is what happened to me. You get a feeling when you get around people who sort of feel like they understand who you are without saying anything, and you understand who they are. And you start to feel there's something magical about New Mexico, first off. And Randy was from New Mexico, and that was where he would go. But there was something grounding about it. Those guys, Carpio and Benito, that we were playing the drum with on the res, I first went to stay with those guys, and we were all really young. We're all old now, right? But we used to be really young, and we did all the crazy things you do. We'd go into Taos into downtown and pick up on white girls and do all that kind of stuff, you know. No offense to anybody, but you know, it wasn't like we weren't saints. We weren't all stoic, but there was something that was like, I don't know what it was. It was this sort of a feeling of trust, and you wanted to. It's like your feet just felt grounded, and I would go there, and I would it's like detoxing somehow. And then I'd be ready to go back into rock and roll. I don't know if you know this, and I'm not complaining, but it's a horrible place. It's like, a lot of money, a lot of egos, a lot of vices and this and that. You have to learn how to balance it, and and it's a lot of fun, but too much of one and it's not good. So it would just give me a good ground so I could come back. And when I started feeling myself going, I'd go back to Indian country, and somehow I would detox the madness and feel focused again. And it's the only way I can really explain it.
There was a woman over here with a question? No? Yeah, you.
Well, I do have two comments, actually. One is about the Mississippi band Choctaw. Is I heard once that they are people who raised $700 in the middle of the 19th century, that's the 1800s, right, to send to the Irish famine. And I have always thought, my God, what a narrow mind we have in this country. People just don't get it, how much communication and importance there was. And the other thing is, I heard a talk last month by Andres Santos. Have you read his book called The Other Slavery? It's about Indian enslavement in this country and some other connections with that as well in Mexico, for example.
Well, I don't know so much about that history. Well, I will tell you a story, though, and I used to think this was kind of like one of those tales, like your dad walking 30 miles to school in the snow. But my grandmother used to tell me how when she was up till, I think she was 6 years old, she lived in a cave on the Rio Grande. And we used to laugh and blah, blah, blah. And years later, I come to find out that my grandmother's mother was stolen by an Apache guy and sold to a Mexican hacienda across the border. When she turned 14, that same guy, who was my great-grandfather, I guess, went back and stole her back, because I guess she was hot. And they had a business running people back and forth from the Rio Grande, across the Rio Grande or something. And my grandmother lived in a cave there until they migrated to Kansas with a group of Apaches. And so, who knows? It's madness, right? And the whole thing's madness. It's a never-ending, you never really, I don't know what you learn in school. I mean, Christopher Columbus discovered us, so I don't know.
Yes.
I'm curious to hear a little bit more about the jazz singer. I'm sorry I don't remember her name, but she was so well documented. The footage that you had of her and all. And why do you suppose she sort of drifted away that we don't all know about her?
Well, she was early on. The other thing that we didn't say in the film, which a lot of people don't know, was Mildred Bailey. There was a lot of jazz people, by the way, in the exhibit that we couldn't fit in the film. Oscar Pettiford. Quincy Jones did a whole thing about Oscar Pettiford, who's credited for one of the inventors of bebop. He's a bass player. And Mildred Bailey's she was the first woman to ever have a radio show, okay? And then the first singer she hired as a young man to be her male singer was Bing Crosby. And we didn't put that in, but Bing Crosby became one of the biggest selling singers of all time.
Yeah, but he was a Native American.
No, he wasn't a Native American, but here she was. If you caught this, the movie wasn't The movie is about who those Native American people influence. So Mildred had a massive influence, obviously, on Bing Crosby, and a massive influence on, as you heard from Tony Bennett, and there was more jazz people, believe it or not. You know, Russell Big Chief Moore, who played the trombone solo on Hello Dolly with Louis Armstrong. You know, and you hear that song now. If you listen to it, you'll hear him go, when the solo starts, you'll hear Louis Armstrong song, "Go Big Chief, go Big Chief," and you never notice that until I tell you. Now you go, oh my God, it's always been there.
Cool. Yes, in the back.
There were so many great musicians from a wide variety of musical idioms. It was interesting to see when the credits were rolling that there was a credit for atmospheric music for Benoit Charette, you know, who come from a completely different type of music.
You know him?
Know him mostly from things like Triplets of Belleville. And I thought he was Quebecois. Is he Hartford people? Or does he have kind of
He is Quebecois. My production company that I did the film with is from Montreal. And we chose Ben to do the film because it's a Canadian production and I'm not a Canadian, so I couldn't score it myself. And we thought Ben would be a good choice, but it's funny you notice that. Yeah. Ben's badass. I like him.
Other questions? Yes.
I'm curious how you chose the director.
The question is, how did you choose the director?
What made you choose that?
Well, she kind of chose herself. And I'll tell you a story. So they had produced a movie called Real Injun that won a Peabody about the Native American stereotype portrayals in Hollywood of Native American people. And it was a really cool film. And Catherine ended up coming in at the end of that as it was and as the producer, and then she ended up being the co-director on that. Catherine wanted to direct the film really, really bad. And somehow, before I knew it, she was just the director. And I had brought in Fonz because I wanted really great cinematography. And that's just what happened because it was her production. Her, Catherine, and Christina Fawn, it was their company, and they came to me. And how they even got the gig was I hadn't decided to work with them yet, but what had happened was there was a thing called Hot Docs, which we won at last week. Rumble won Hot Docs last week, and this crazy thing. And
$50,000?
$50,000. Yeah, we got a $50,000 check. It was awesome. So, I was living in Canada at the time, and they go, come up to this thing. And I drove up to this thing, and they sat me down in front of every network, and I told them this story of Rumble. And every single network said yes, which is unheard of. So then Catherine and Christina Fawn's really amazing at making deals. She did our HBO deal and all of our independent lens and these other deals that we have now. And Christina went to work trying to figure out, you couldn't cross into states from Canada if you're going to be on Super Channel and blah, blah, blah. And before I knew it, we were making a film. And so then that was it. It was like I never even got to meet with other people. It was just on. And so started 4 years of living hell. It was really hard. Making a documentary is not easy. I'm going to tell you guys that. It's not that sexy. Even with Steven Tyler. I mean, Steven Tyler, my dear friend, I've known him since I was a kid. He's like, yeah, Stevie, I'll do the movie. Meet me in L.A. on Tuesday. So I fly out to L.A. and I can't do it Tuesday. And then I sit in a hotel and he goes, I'll do it tomorrow morning. Call me at 10. And 11 o'clock at night, he calls me, sorry. And, I'm not kidding. So you're sitting around, you're waiting and you're waiting and you wait, And then finally on the Thursday night, I'm not name dropping, but I was supposed to fly to Oklahoma to go to this lunch with Johnny Depp. And I canceled because Steven still hadn't shot. And then he calls me Thursday morning. He goes, Stevie, I got to play the Hollywood Bowl tonight. I got to fly out tomorrow. I'm sorry, I can't do it. We'll have to reschedule. And I knew him enough to say, fuck you. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you crazy? I've been sitting in a hotel for 4 days, blah, blah, blah. He goes, okay. So he goes, okay. And I'm in Santa Monica, and he's at the Sunset Marquis, which is about, 35, 45-minute drive. He goes, can you be here in 15 minutes? And I didn't say where I was. I go, I'll be there. And he goes, okay. And I got in my car, and I got there, and of course he was an hour late. And he goes, but he goes, can you be here in 15 minutes? You can sit with me for 10 minutes. Or maybe he said 5 minutes. And I said, no problem, I'll be right there. So I haul ass there. I get set up down in the studio in the Sunset Marquis. There's a studio down in the parking garage. And he shows up an hour late, and then he sits with me for 2 hours. So, these are the things you got to do. But I knew that the real thing I wanted, the reason there's so many superstars in the film is it's really important. It's not maybe what you think. I didn't want a race film. When I was a kid, I'd watch a film about the black experience and with Robert Johnson and Little Richard, and then there'd be an African-American musicologist saying, Elvis was a racist. Little Richard invented rock. And I'd say, well, maybe that's true, and I don't know, but it's a negative, and I like Elvis too. And then, I'd watch the White Experience with Elvis and the Beatles, and I didn't want musicologists, especially Native American musicologists, saying, we did this, and we did this, and we did this. So I wanted the people that everyone knows and trusted. If somebody that's been in your life your whole time, like Jeff Beck or Eric Clapton or Steven Tyler, or if one of those guys tells you, hey, this guy, the reason I did this because of this, you tend to take the information in a different way. Mm-hmm. And that's why we had so many rock stars in the film, because I wanted them to tell how they were inspired by these guys. And that's why they're there.
All right. Is that a Jim over there? Okay, Jim.
How do we get our friends to see this movie?
The film will be opening at the Raffel. I can't give you an exact date, but in August, after it opens in New York at the Film Forum. So you could either fly to New York and see it in the Film Forum, or you can just come down the hill from your house and see it here. Up to you.
Yeah, and please tell all your friends. Please tell all your friends.
Yes, over here.
What's it going to take to get Link Ray into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I've been working on that for years, actually. And believe it or not, and I'm not going to take all the credit for it, but we got him nominated about 3 years ago for the first time. And at South by Southwest this year, I live in Austin, Texas now, and I was hanging out with a guy from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame who's a friend of mine, and we were talking about this. And Stephen Van Zandt, Robbie Robertson, Slash, a lot of these guys now are kind of get a push, and we hope that the film is going to be what it takes to make all the voters understand that this guy in 1957 invented rock and roll power chord and distorted guitar on record. I mean, Jeff Beck told me one time that he and Jimmy Page, if you can picture this, from Led Zeppelin, when they were 17, used to jump around on his bed at his mom's house playing air guitar to Link Ray. I mean, what was this? Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck. I mean, So it's about time that Link Ray gets in the Rock and Roll Hall, and it's the one thing I have left I want to see get done when it comes to this subject, I think. And the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has contacted me, too, about maybe later on, maybe having the film be a part of a section in the thing with some of these Native American musicians can have a little. So we'll see, but it's something we're working on.
We got time for like one more question here, and there's okay, yes, you.
It's the roots of America, isn't it?
Yeah.
The development of, modernized, colonized America really, really, isn't it?
I didn't hear the question.
She was moved by the footage. Well, you got to thank Catherine Bainbridge and Lisa Roth and our research team at Resolution Pictures in Montreal. Write them all letters on their website and tell them that you love the film, because they worked so hard on it, and I'm such an asshole. I mean, I wore them out so much. I mean, I'm not kidding. It's like I was screaming, and like they had a different end for the film, and I had to, we got into Sundance. We didn't know we were going to get into Sundance, and when we got the call from Sundance, the movie was 3 hours long, and we're like, oh shit. And I had already booked some concerts in Japan, and we were doing it, and the ending that we had was not this ending. And so it was a hard struggle, and they really, really wanted it to be great. And so if you ever see Resolution Pictures Montreal, see them on Facebook, or write them and tell them you love it, because they worked so hard on this, and they put up with such shit from me. Yeah, I'd never seen anything before like, blacks, Indians, whites. I'd never seen that in my life. It was like, that blew my mind too. There's a lot of things about the film when I saw it blew my mind as we were putting it together. So, yeah, I'm with you.
How did Scorsese get in the film?
Because, I don't know if you know this, but Martin Scorsese was a struggling filmmaker and he was best friends with a superstar named Robbie Robertson. Okay, they were roommates. Okay, so then Scorsese shoots The Last Waltz. Then Scorsese becomes this gigantic guy. And now, I don't know if you know this, Robbie Robertson just scored Wolf of Wall Street. Robbie Robertson still does almost all of Scorsese's films. So Marty wanted to talk about his buddy Robbie. So how all those people got into film was they had a deep, deep love. Steven Tyler was like, when Joe Perry and I were trying to start Aerosmith, we didn't know what we wanted to sound like, and we would just listen over and over to Taj Mahal and Jesse Ed Davis, and so he wanted to tell that story, with the Mildred Bailey story with, Tony Bennett. Tony wanted to tell that story, so it wasn't so hard. We didn't pay anybody. Those people really wanted. They really had a real love and a real admiration for these people and wanted this story told.
It's an amazing story, and we didn't pay everybody here to stay here all this whole time either. So that's a great sign. You've been a great audience, and please tell your friends about Rumble. And when it opens at the Rafael, we expect to see you all back. And really, this was a gift for all of us, Stevie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.